All right, welcome to Comfortably Uncomfortable. You've got Sandy and Alex here, and we are here to empower women to choose courage over comfort by getting comfortably uncomfortable. We get real and cut through the bullshit. Are you ready to get a little weird? Because we're going to laugh, sweat, cry, and grow together.
No topic is going to be TMI. Well, maybe for me, but not for Sandy. We complement each other in that way. Okay, so are we ready?
Well, yeah, duh, I am, but are you?
Okay, let's go. The one with the pretending. So I think this is a pretty stellar follow-up from our last episode, if I do say so myself.
Because we both faked orgasms,
Yep.
yes, and pretended.
So, please note and go back to the last episode if you haven't listened, because it's a very fun one. But today we're bringing it back a little bit. We're reining it in. We're not, we're talking about pretending in general, right? And how I would say, venture to say, women in particular, right? Pretend, have this, I'm fine, it's fine, we're fine, everything's fine.
Everything's fine. I'm good.
Yep. Have you?
How are you feeling? Good.
Good. I'm good. Everything's
I'm good. I'm fine.
Have you ever seen that meme of the woman in a bathrobe and her house is literally engulfed in flames behind her?
Oh, yes.
And she's smiling, and underneath it's like, I'm fine. We're fine. It's all fine.
It's good. It's fine. I mean, we can laugh about it, but it's so like, I mean, especially right now with COVID and the pandemic and just all these feelings and politically and like cancel culture. I mean, it is hard right now to just like, I don't know, like to not pretend in a way or to be what I call it of like pretending. Like if somebody's saying like, oh, Sandy, because the thing I get feedback is like, Sandy, you're so brutally honest. Sandy, you're so blunt. Like I could never imagine you pretending. And it's just like, it's survival mode. I mean, there are times in our lives where it's just we are in this survival mode, and that's when I would say I'm pretending.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna unpack that right now. I'm not sure I'm gonna dig deep in there, so I'm just gonna stay here and yep, we're gonna keep going. Just keep swimming.
And I think whether we notice it or not, we're all obviously guilty of that at points. And I mean, you can be as cognizant of it as you want, but it doesn't mean you're going to be able to avoid it. And I thought that survival mode, I thought that was an interesting point, because it's not just saying, no, I'm good, I can handle it, I'm fine. Like it's where, it could be sort of a conscious pretending or not asking for help, doing it all on your own, but also
subconsciously.
I was talking to a friend recently who's has a newborn, and it's her second, and she didn't even realize that she was pretending, right? Like she, you get into this mode, which I know we can both relate to with newborns, of like, well, I know I'm going to do it better, or I can do it faster, or I know more of what the baby wants, or apply that to any other situation that we, you come across, and you just take it on, but you don't realize that you're in that pretending mode, that you're not accepting the help, and you just sort of keep going, because that's how you put one foot in front of the other until someone has to tell you, stop, you need help with X, Y, and Z. You need to let people support you and take these things over for you. So I think it's, like you just said, it can be very conscious or completely unconscious pretending.
Well, typically when you hit into a survival mode, it is subconscious. It's not something that you're actively saying, hey, I'm going to switch into this gear and just keep going. Usually it's the only way that you do keep going.
Right.
And I love it because like if you were to tell me like, no, Sandy, you need to stop, you need help, I'd be like, girl, back off, because like that's just I am I mean, to a fault independent. And it wasn't until I realized that being overly independent is a sign of trauma. It's a sign of trying to protect yourself, put up the walls, not be vulnerable, all these things that, research is showing that like is going to give you more joy and give you more peace. Yet, the thing that's just fascinating with me is like, if I were to change the word pretending, and I were going to say people pleasing, what would be your reaction?
I feel like through this podcast, I've gotten to know you different ways. But at first, I don't think I'd be like, no, that I don't. Because again, to your point, like you're blunt, you're honest, but I don't think that necessarily. Sometimes we have to dig to get your personal thing right
Oh
instead of
yeah,
being
yeah.
honest, like
Well, the
towards
thing
the
that
other
brings me
person.
up is like I had a conversation and I always saw myself as like a people pleaser. And then it was brought to me like, no, I would not categorize you. Just like you were right there, like, nah,
Yeah.
I would not put you in that category, Sandy. Yet that's how I viewed
Yeah.
myself. Like I
Yeah.
viewed myself as a people pleaser, or maybe I just became a good pretender. I don't know, like it's not like, no, like I like to think that I'm authentic, but I bring it up because I found something on the Psychology Today of like 10 signs or whatever that you are a people pleaser, and it
Uh-huh.
struck a chord because it made me think of this whole pretending. Like literally the
Yeah.
first one is you pretend to agree with everyone. And so this whole idea of like,
Yeah.
when is it that we are just doing it as a social courtesy, or
Uh-huh.
because we live in such extreme worlds right now that like it's not a safe place to kind of disagree with someone, because then you might
Right.
be like socially outcasted. So this whole thing of like
Very
being
real consequences.
yes, and it's
Mhm.
such a weird time. Like I find like it's such a weird time because I have to know that it's safe for me to fully
Yeah.
say, like even this whole podcast was like,
I
it's like
agree.
you got to be uncomfortable and like feel
Uh-huh.
safe to be like, well, I don't know if I agree with you.
I mean, you know how uncomfortable that makes me. That's why we're here. So you're preaching to the choir right now. But
But then
I
like I mean
think
the next one's like literally, I mean I could talk to most women and it makes me giggle because it's like you feel responsible for how other people feel is number 2.
Mhm.
Number 3 is you apologize often.
Mm.
Number 4 is you feel burdened by the things you have to do.
Mhm.
5, you can't say no.
Yep.
6, you feel uncomfortable if someone is angry at you.
Check.
7, you act like the people around you. Okay, so that one might not be me because I'm just a weirdo, but
No, you're
8,
not,
you
but
need praise to feel good.
uh-huh.
9, you go to great lengths to avoid conflict. And then
Yeah.
10, you don't admit when your feelings are hurt. And it just made me feel like all of those go under this concept of
Oh
like
my gosh.
pretending, and like how we do it in different stages in our life.
Yeah.
And like this whole reason of like, why do we do that? Like, is it to
Well,
avoid
it's
the conflict? Is it to
yeah.
not, like, why do you do that? What comes up for you?
First, I want to make sure we link that list in the show notes.
Yeah. I mean, it's just,
Because
yeah, it's
anyone
Psychology
listening,
Today.
plus myself, every time I'm, yep, uh-huh, yeah. Like,
Yeah, it's from
okay, yikes.
2017 and literally it was like a
Okay.
little Google, and we'll link it. But yeah,
We'll
it
link
was
it
just like,
because I
oh
think
my
that's
gosh.
fascinating. I something was coming to mind when you were talking before, saying I use or have used. It's like I am most effective when I'm busier. Like the more projects
Mhm.
I have, the more I get done. That's bullshit. Come on.
I mean,
I
but it's
like
true. Like I got eye surgery and like I had to do nothing all weekend and I was like, I'm going to clear out the storage room. And it's like I don't know how
yeah,
to just be with my freaking self
I
anymore. Like
know. I
just to
know.
like
And just
be.
like yeah, take on extra projects because I don't know why. I don't know why. And
Yeah.
it's I think this is a really interesting topic, but I think it's so difficult. Although I have to say one of the things with COVID is I think that it's becoming a little more commonplace for people to say, I'm not okay. Or
Yeah. Yeah.
this,
Like
it's not
it's
all
okay.
fine.
Yeah, it's okay
And
to not be okay. The
right.
thing that's interesting for me, and again, like I know I've had big T trauma in my life, death, divorce, delivery. I mean, we've all, but then there's, for me it's the like little T trauma
Yeah.
that is one of those things where it's like it's hard for me to admit, or to like I
Mhm.
don't want to burden others and be like,
Right.
"Oh no, like it's fine. I'm fine. We'll keep going."
Well, cuz
Yet
everyone has
like
their own shit. So
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
don't want to, yeah, make yours feel bigger than someone else's.
Yet it has a true lasting impact.
Absolutely.
And this whole thing of like, I find it fascinating, like that thing of like, oh, how are you today? And I've totally made people awkward. I mean, hello, it's me. But like when I actually answer, like instead of saying the, oh, hey, how are ya? And people are just like, good. And you like keep walking,
Mhm.
like you're like, put the wave and
Mhm.
you're like, and then like, I've totally been like, no, I'm not really doing well today. And they're like, wait,
Mhm.
what?
But actually I got to go.
I gotta
So
go. But just being empowered of saying like
uh-huh.
when you feel safe to like say that, and I do think COVID, to your point of, has made that come okay, but yet at the same time it's like certain things are
Yeah.
okay to say, like Zoom school, or this, or
Yeah.
like it's still a very uncomfortable situation to like admit to yourself or admit to others,
Mhm.
because we get into this like we need to solve it. Like, I'm going to solve your
Right.
problem. I'm going to
Right.
find that hack. How can I
Yeah.
create that
Yeah.
hack
Yeah.
to make it
Yeah.
easier? Where
Mhm.
sometimes you just got to sit in the dirty water. And I'm saying
Yeah.
this and I freaking hate it. I've sat in it enough. I had a conversation with my girlfriend like literally 20 minutes ago, and I was like, I am ready to be out of this dirty water. Like, I've done my work and I want to get out of here. But yet there's no way I'd be here if I didn't
Yeah.
sit in the dirty water, or to your point, like
Totally.
ask
Mhm.
for that help,
Mhm.
or, literally get off of social media. Like, that's the big one for me, of like coming
Yeah.
up, of like realizing like, with my eye surgery, I couldn't really,
Comparison or
well, it's just like I couldn't, like, yes, I'm on social media, Instagram, and I can't really compare, but just knowing for me of like, I feel like I'm on there a lot. And then this weekend with getting PRK, which is a form of LASIK, like I literally couldn't look at my phone, and seeing that I was like reaching for it. And it was just this
oh.
whole thing of like, why? And like, it goes back to this whole like data episode of like, is it serving me? And subconsciously feeling like,
Mhm.
am I pretending, or like pretending that I want to be like somebody else, or
Yes.
comparing myself? And like
Mhm.
that, I think, has had a much bigger impact, because we go to the extremes. Like on either
Yeah.
social media, you see the people who are like, happy, here are my vacation pictures, here's all like my happy reel,
Mhm.
or the ones that are completely open and okay to like, I'm going to say this in the nicest way possible, but like put their drama out on
Yeah.
in
Right.
public, which
Yep.
I'm very like shut off. I'm like, I don't like to tell people. Like, I know people
Yeah.
now listening, they're like, Sandy, you're divorced. And I'm like, yeah, I've been divorced for almost 3 years. I'm like, oh, I had no idea. I'm like, I know. Like, that's not something that I announce, but like, there's
Right.
no room in this middle part to be like what you said, like, be able to say, yeah, no, I'm not okay, without it being like, oh, well, can I fix that for you? Can I get
Right.
you that support? And it's just like, what do we do
Yeah.
with that?
Well, and also, I mean, with the social media stuff, same thing I said before. Like, I don't like putting it out there because I don't like making my thing more important than someone else's.
It's not. I mean,
But
we all have shit. Like you said, we all
yeah,
have shit.
yeah. There's a so one of the episodes coming up is going to be a review on this book, Burnout, which I'm so excited about. But I probably going to screw this up a little bit and I'll get it right during that episode. But one of the things she talked about was like, okay, if you went on vacation and you left your dog with someone and they told you, we left the dog outside. It was pretty cold, but the dog's fine. Like, she'll make it. It's fine. Like, or like you found out your kid was at school and, well, she didn't really eat lunch, but, she's going to be okay. And this goes on for days without, you being informed. Like, would you ever, or, you see a best friend in a bad situation struggling, like, would you ever actually think that's okay? Would you ever just sit by and let that happen? No. So,
Yeah.
like, why would you let it happen to yourself?
Well, that's
Right?
the thing, right? It's
Why
like
do
sitting
you
with yourself.
suffer?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's like sitting with ourselves when we don't have a responsibility or thing we need to do, or next thing on our to-do list, and we just like literally
Right.
sit.
Go,
Like,
go,
I'm not
go,
even
go.
talking like trying to meditate. I'm not trying to say like, quiet your mind. Like, literally just like be there.
Right.
and like notice what comes up. Like I bet for most of us it's like uncomfortable. It's like, oh, I don't know. I don't know
Completely.
about this. And I think we do. I think the person we pretend the most with is with ourselves.
Absolutely. 100%.
And it comes back to that people pleasing of like it might be in the survival mode, or it might be easier to like socially, interact, to just be able to be on this like superficial level because
Mhm.
I don't know, like it's really hard to not want to argue with someone. Like it really is. And I keep coming back to this idea of like, is it because you think it's saying something about yourself rather than the other person? Is that why you need the other person to see your side of it or see your truth? Like that you feel so passionate about? Because that's me. I mean,
Mhm.
that describes me to a T. Like if you,
Yeah.
and granted, this is mostly people that have those triggers in your life, right? Like the people on the peripheral, you're kind of like, yeah, whatever,
Yeah,
go
yeah, yeah,
on.
yeah,
It
yeah.
doesn't bother me. I'm
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
like the meaningful relationships in your life, or the people that like, what is I always
Sure.
mess these up. Strike a chord, thinking, I don't,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I got you.
Okay, good. I see I already lost my train of thought. But this just like, how do you communicate and not want to please or pretend, but
Mhm.
also admit that like I might not be asking for a solution right now?
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough one, and I think it depends how you're brought up, and I think we're on the same we have similar experience where like conflict was not really okay
Yeah.
for like I was like, no, it's fine. Like that was totally ingrained in me. It was like, we're not gonna have a fight about it. We're not gonna butt heads. It's just we're gonna gloss over.
But that would be
So
one extreme,
that's
right? Like it's like conflict
right,
is one on
right.
one end, and then on the other end is this like just shove it under the rug.
Yeah,
We're gonna put a smile on it and
yeah.
just like keep going.
And when that's very ingrained, it's hard to get out of that. And I am
Yeah.
personally putting a lot of very, very conscious effort into that in the past few years, but it's gutting. It's not fun to be so
No.
conscientious of it. And I think for me, one of my intentions or ways to kind of back out of this is to try to have more intentional conversations with a few people. Right. So thinking more of like the one on one versus the mass,
Right.
right? Because
Right.
I'm not comfortable yet with exposing to the mass, but I want to make sure that I'm making more of those one on one connections. To your point, with the important people in my life, to, make sure it's okay not to be okay for them or for me. And then, also clients or anyone else I'm interacting with to really, try to try to force myself in that direction.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing that I heard right there, and I'd force you of being like, where's that one-on-one conversation with yourself, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And especially females, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say males aren't like this either, but I'm a female and I only know myself, is we are so quick to want to take care of others.
Yeah.
And so we will pretend that we have other people to take care of first
Yeah.
when we need to take care of
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah.
And so whatever that looks like, I think that's the first person you need to have that conversation with is
Absolutely.
with yourself and say, "Hey, like it's okay to not be okay and you might not be on the extreme." Like this is what I find fascinating of this idea of like asking for support, to bring it back around, to where you started this conversation of like you don't have to be on this extreme end to be able to have that conversation with yourself and say, "Oh, this isn't okay." Like it doesn't have to be big T trauma
Right.
to be
Right.
like,
Right.
"Oh, I want to talk to someone. I want to sit with myself.
Mhm.
I need a day to
Right.
just not be pretending that everything
Mhm.
is like normal or
Right.
whatever normal looks like."
Right.
And just be able to say, "I don't really know how to fix it. I'm gonna be here maybe." And
Yes.
then just own it. I mean, that's going to come
Yeah.
back to this idea of
Yeah.
like owning it and saying, "Yeah, this is comfortably uncomfortable and I'm not going to gloss over it. And if somebody, if that's what you choose, maybe that's the challenge of like, instead of saying, I'm fine, everything's fine, you also can say like, no, but it's also not the worst, right? Like,
yeah,
it,
it's totally allowed.
right. Like it doesn't have to be one extreme or the other. We can be bringing to our awareness and out of this like survival mode of just keep going and get through. And I think this is a perfect timing because things are starting to open up again. We had big shifts in our life this past year with the pandemic and understanding that like you don't have to go back to the way it was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Might have learned a lot of things about yourself, relationships, friendships, and who you are to be able to say, well, I'm going to be here for a little bit and it's not extreme. It's not like, you know, you need to call 911 on me, but also I'm not going to pretend like everything's fine. I'm fine. Everything's fine.
Right. And to maybe end it on a positive note, because you know I like to do that.
Look at you. You want to wrap it in a bow. And I'm like, nope, we're just going to stay right here in the dirty water. Let's just sit here.
But here's real quick. What if things are like great, but you're pretending it's stressful because you don't want to make someone else feel bad who's in the same situation and super stressed?
Oh, like you mean the reverse? Like you're doing great, but your friend is in a shitty situation?
Yeah, sort of like people like to, I feel like people like to commiserate sometimes, right? And that makes sense. But what if you don't want to? What if that situation isn't bad for you or you're having a great day? Like you don't have to pretend that it's just all okay if you actually want to celebrate.
Oh, yeah. No, I think that's the other thing too. It's like figuring out the why you're pretending, and which is hilarious because our first episode is the why, is going to be the main basis of this of like, is pretending serving you? Because it's like that whole thing of, you know, it comes back to like, hey, do I look fat in this outfit? And someone's like, no, like you can't like, but it comes back to this idea of like, you know, why are you pretending? Is it to get through that meal that you have to get through because you know if you bring it up, it's just going to be open up a whole new can of worms? Well, then okay. But if you're sitting there and being like, something feels off, like I don't feel fulfilled, I'm lacking interest, or, you know, like I'm afraid that if I celebrate this, this person's going to feel, you know, like I got a lot of that of like when I was getting divorced, you know, my friends were getting pregnant again and having their second kids or, you know, getting married, doing all the celebrations. And I could tell they were like downplaying it because they didn't want to make me feel bad.
Right.
And I don't know, this is just me, but I could read their bullshit and I'd be like, bullshit, like stop. Like that's almost makes it worse for me because it's like a pity party where it's like, no, like you don't have to be an asshole and like gloat it, but you can also like, if you are being real with yourself, you can enjoy other people's success. Like that's the whole point, right? Is to like be there for each other. So yeah, I mean, I think the thing is like, for me to put in a bow is I never thought pretending would go with people pleasing or the other way around. Cause like I said, I thought of myself as a people pleaser, but I didn't think of myself as a pretender. And so like this idea of like sitting with yourself and being like, okay, am I trying to please others for a short-term effect to just get through whatever this needs to get through? Or is it really not serving me and taking away from just what makes me feel good or wanting to live a better life kind of thing?
Right. All right. I think those are good thoughts.
Yeah. And it's okay to sit in the dirty, just sit in the dirty water. Doesn't have to be so dramatic. And it's okay. Like that's all I'm going to say. I'm not even like finish it. Like there's like that compulsive of wanting to like have closure. Alex, we're not going to have closure on this one. It's just going to be. Thank you for showing up today. Getting awkward is always more fun with friends. Give us a review, tag us, and share us so we can continue to grow together.
Use hashtag CUPod, letter C, letter U, or tag us. You can find Sandy on Instagram at Sweat and Shine On, and Alex at aj.afterbabyfit on Instagram and afterbabyfit on Facebook and YouTube. We'll see you next time.